The news hit like a thunderclap. The Supreme Court rules in favor of Trump's executive authority. Within minutes, cable networks flashed red banners, reporters stumbled over their words, and the nation held its breath. Trump, standing behind a podium at Mar-a-Lago, didn't smile, he grinned. This wasn't just a legal win, it was a declaration of dominance. For years, he had fought the deep state, claiming faceless bureaucrats were sabotaging his vision. Now, the highest court in the land had handed him the one weapon he always wanted, the unchecked power to remove anyone standing in his way. Federal workers, agency heads, career officials, all suddenly vulnerable. In Washington, silence fell over departments like a funeral shroud. Phones stopped ringing, emails went unanswered, everyone waited for the first head to roll. And when it did, when the first pink slip hit a senior staffer's desk, everyone knew, this was only the beginning. Trump's message that night was short, almost surgical. Accountability starts today. What no one realized, was that accountability meant loyalty, to him alone. The first wave hit the Department of Energy. 200 dismissals in one morning, security escorts, locked badges, silent elevators. By noon, emails leaked to the press, and anchors began to whisper the phrase, the Trump purge. He had done what no president dared, using the Supreme Court's blessing, he began clearing out decades of bureaucratic resistance. Every name crossed off his list was a symbol of defiance erased. Inside the West Wing, fear took physical form. Aides spoke in half-sentences, glancing at phones that could be tapped, cameras that might be recording. Trump's team called it Restoration Day, his critics called it the end of independence. At rallies, supporters roared his name as if he were a crusader cleansing the system. But in Washington's dim offices, one woman, Julia Grant, a senior analyst with 30 years of service, refused to sign her resignation. "He can fire me," she whispered to her assistant, "but he can't rewrite the truth." She didn't know that her defiance had already been noticed, her name underlined twice in red ink on a list labeled non-compliant. By dawn the next day, the phrase, "at-will government," was trending, and the rulebook that once shielded career staff felt like ash in everyone's hands. Julia Grant arrived early, coat still damp from a hard rain, and found her division's mission statement peeled off the wall. Someone had scraped it down to primer. New placards waited in boxes: alignment, acceleration, loyalty. The words looked like a marching order masquerading as a vision. HR had become a security checkpoint. Laptops were imaged, Slack channels archived, and a new portal demanded employees e-sign a sweeping pledge, acknowledge reassignments without appeal, disclose all outside contacts, submit talking points for pre-clearance. Refusal counted as insubordination subject to immediate separation. A countdown timer blinked beside every name. Julia's badge still opened doors, but conversations died when she entered. In a glass huddle room, a political appointee explained the future with a realtor's smile. "We're streamlining truth," he said. "No more sand in the gears." He slid a folder across the table, her decades of risk assessments condensed to 2 cherry-picked pages, stripped of warnings that might slow a ribbon cutting. "Sign and certify. We go live Friday," she read, jaw set. The model's failure rates were buried, the public safety caveats, gone. If this rollout stumbled, hospitals would feel it first, then towns that never saw Washington except on their tax returns. She lifted her pen, not to sign, but to underline a single erased paragraph and wrote in the margin, "Reintroduce full risk profile or remove my name." Silence. The appointee's smile cooled. "You're talented, Ms. Grant. Don't make a statement you can't take back." Outside, the building hummed with obedient speed, printer trays spitting fresh pledges, couriers ferrying boxes, managers practicing a new vocabulary where dissent became drag and warning became woke. Julia opened her phone. In her draft sat an unsigned memo, a map of every suppressed figure and pressure point. She hesitated, then added one line at the top: "If the court rewrote accountability, the public must rewrite attention." She hit send, to a journalist who still answered at odd hours. Somewhere between her pulse and the whir of the HVAC, the old government exhaled. And the new one, certain of its mandate, didn't notice the spark she'd just struck. Cable news opened with a new word that morning: unbound. The Supreme Court's decision hadn't just redrawn the lines of power, it had erased them. By now, over 15,000 federal employees had been dismissed, their access revoked overnight. In the West Wing, aides compared notes in whispers, trading rumors like currency. He's replacing everyone with loyalists. He's firing inspectors next. No one's safe. But in a quiet Georgetown townhouse, Julia Grant watched the chaos unfold with steady eyes. Her anonymous memo had detonated across major outlets, complete with internal emails and risk models she'd preserved before her clearance vanished. The headline read, "Inside the President's Quiet Coup." It was enough to stall a single program launch, but not enough to slow the machinery he'd built. The backlash came fast. The White House called her a traitor, pundits dissected her motives, social media flooded with threats. Yet even as her name burned online, reporters kept calling. Each leak revealed more: shelved audits, censored findings, policy rewrites scribbled in the margins by political aides. The public's shock turned to unease, unease to anger. Then, late that night, a new directive surfaced. Digitally signed, legally sealed, authorizing the reconstitution of administrative trust. In one paragraph, it granted the president authority to appoint temporary overseers without congressional approval. Julia read it twice. It wasn't just a reshuffle, it was consolidation. Somewhere between the executive branches and the glow of late-night talk shows, a single question began to rise. If one man can decide who serves, who do the rest of us serve? Julia closed her laptop and looked out over the Capitol dome. The light still burned, but for the first time, she wondered who they were shining for. The morning after the leak, Washington pulsed with electricity, not the kind that powers buildings, but the kind that makes people whisper before they speak. The White House had declared a full-spectrum review of internal sabotage. By noon, every journalist who'd quoted Julia's memo had received a subpoena. Her face, once unknown, filled every cable network banner, labeled Deep State Insider. Trump's base roared with fury. At rallies, chants of "lock her up," again, mixed with "drain the drainers." He smiled through it, not with humor, but recognition. The Supreme Court's ruling had handed him the weapon, Julia's defiance gave him the target. That night, he went live on Truth Social. "We're cleaning house. These bureaucrats thought they owned the government, wrong. The people do. And we're not done yet." The post gathered 2 million likes in under an hour. Beneath it, a photo of Julia's townhouse appeared, grainy, but unmistakable. By sunrise, a crowd had gathered outside her door. Julia watched through the blinds, heart hammering. Her neighbors avoided eye contact. 2 men in suits stood by a black SUV, not law enforcement, private contractors, the kind you hire when you don't want paperwork. She packed a small bag, grabbed a flash drive from the kitchen drawer, and slipped out the back alley. Inside it was everything she hadn't leaked, encrypted versions of documents that proved the plan went far deeper. Every department, every agency, each being hollowed out, replaced by loyal operatives. The purge wasn't about control, it was about permanence. She reached Union Station before dawn and bought a ticket under a fake name. As the train pulled away, she looked at the Capitol fading through the fog and whispered, "They think this is about me, it's about all of us." Her phone buzzed. A single encrypted message flashed on the screen. "They know. Run." The train entered a tunnel. Darkness swallowed everything, except the truth still burning in her hand. Julia didn't sleep for 40 hours. The train had carried her north, through towns too small for news alerts but large enough to feel the tension. By the time she stepped off in Philadelphia, her reflection in the station window barely looked human, hollow eyes, hair matted, a woman both hunted and awake. She dumped her phone in a trash bin and walked into the fog, clutching the flash drive like a pulse. She knew one name, Vargas. Years ago, he'd run data audits for the Federal Cybersecurity Bureau before resigning, for personal reasons. In truth, he'd seen what was coming. The rumors said he ran a safehouse network for whistleblowers and displaced analysts. Julia followed a breadcrumb trail of encrypted emails until she reached a warehouse by the river. The door opened before she could knock. Inside, monitors glowed like low moons. A dozen faces turned toward her, men and women of different agencies, all carrying the same haunted stillness. Vargas stood in front, silver-haired, coat still military neat. "So," he said, his voice a calm rasp. "The ghost from Commerce finally surfaces." Julia handed him the drive. "It's worse than we thought," she whispered. "He's building a parallel government, loyal appointees, private contractors, secret directives. The court gave him the key, and he's changing every lock." Vargas plugged in the drive. The data unfurled, reassignments, contracts, and a new internal task force marked Directive R5, a department that didn't officially exist. Its mission: ensure ideological consistency across all federal structures. He looked up. This isn't reform. It's reprogramming. For the next 2 days, the warehouse became a war room. Julia and the others mapped the structure, who was purged, who remained, and which journalists could still be trusted. Every document she'd risked her life to save became a thread in something larger, a counter-record, a living archive of the truth. But every message they sent bounced slower. Their secure channels flickered. Vargas swore under his breath. "They're scanning packet signatures now. The purge has gone digital." Julia's hands trembled. "If they find us." "They will," he cut in. "So we go louder." He turned the monitors toward her. On one of them was a blank page labeled Project Catalyst. "You wanted accountability?" Vargas said, smiling faintly. "Then let's give the truth a signal boost they can't silence." As she typed the first lines of the new leak, her heart beating with terror and clarity, Julia understood something simple but terrifying: she wasn't hiding anymore. She was declaring war. The signal went live at 2:13 a.m. Eastern. For the first 47 seconds, every major network flickered, the familiar blue banner of a breaking story suddenly overridden by a black screen and the sound of static. Then, Julia's voice cut through. Calm. Controlled. A ghost speaking from inside the machine. "If you're seeing this, you deserve to know what's been done in your name." Behind her voice rolled images, signed directives, redacted memos, firing lists scrolling like obituaries. Each slide carried the seal of an American department, proof too detailed to fake. She narrated the story of a quiet coup, the Supreme Court ruling that stripped oversight, the replacement of public servants with loyal operatives, and the creation of Directive R5, the task force designed to rewrite democracy from the inside out. The broadcast spread like wildfire. Social feeds froze, reposted, fractured. Cable hosts yelled over each other, fire alarms went off in federal buildings as panicked aides tried to pull the plugs. But the leak had already gone global, mirrored across servers in 5 countries. Julia and Vargas watched from the warehouse, the glow of screens painting their faces. "They can't bury it now," she whispered. Vargas shook his head. "They won't bury it. They'll burn it." He was right. Within an hour, drones were circling above the riverfront, triangulating the source of the feed. The emergency alerts on every phone screamed, "Unverified foreign interference detected." In Washington, the president stood before cameras, his face calm but eyes sharp. "This is treason, folks. These are the same bureaucrats who failed you. We're restoring order, and we will not let chaos win." Crowds gathered in city centers, some chanting Julia's name like a battle cry, others demanding her arrest. News tickers flipped between "whistleblower hero" and "domestic terrorist." The country was splitting in real time, fault lines glowing red-hot beneath the screens. Julia's earpiece crackled, Vargas shouting over interference. "They've got a lock. You need to move." She hesitated, watching the stream cross 1 million viewers, then 5 million, then 10. The truth had finally escaped her hands, bigger than she'd ever imagined. She turned to Vargas. "It's out now. They can find me. But they can't erase this." Outside, the city sirens wailed like a warning to everyone still awake. And somewhere in the distance, the first blackout rolled across the East Coast. By sunrise, America was a different country. The grid was fractured, whole swaths of the East Coast sat in darkness, government sites crashed, and communication towers blinked out one by one. Rumors spread faster than facts. Some said it was a cyber attack, others whispered civil unrest. But Julia knew better. The blackout wasn't chaos, it was control. Vargas's voice came through the emergency radio, grainy and distant. "They're rebooting the system. Emergency authorities been transferred to R5. You started a chain reaction." Julia ducked into an abandoned metro tunnel, her flashlight slicing through the dark. Her laptop's dying battery still flickered with fragments of the leak, screenshots, names, lists of purged officials. It wasn't enough. "The truth is out there now," she said. "They can't stop it." But even as she spoke, the feeds vanished one by one. The government's new AI censorship network, something called Project Paragon, was scrubbing every mention, replacing it with official briefings. Julia's voice online was being replaced by fabricated versions of herself, confessing, apologizing, recanting. Vargas met her at the safe house hours later. His arm was bandaged, and he looked older, thinner. "They raided half the network," he said quietly. "We lost 15 people. But we've still got the core servers offline, buried." He slid a battered flash drive across the table. "This is the failsafe. You get this to the press, the real press, before they vanish too." Outside, a low hum vibrated through the streets, helicopters, drones, curfews being enforced. The city's billboards displayed the president's face under the words, "Order restored." But the crowds were restless. Protesters marched with flashlights, chanting Julia's name again, not out of loyalty, but out of defiance. "The country's cracking," Vargas murmured, watching the lights flicker. "Half believe you saved them. Half think you betrayed them." Julia clenched her jaw. Maybe both are true. A noise at the door made them freeze. Heavy boots. The thud of a battering ram. Vargas pressed the drive into her palm. "Go. You're the last link now. Come with me," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "Somebody has to stall the ending." He turned as the door splintered. Julia bolted through the back exit into the storm. Thunder echoed like gunfire as floodlights swept the alleys. She ran until the city disappeared behind her, a dying empire of neon and fear. At the edge of the woods, she collapsed, clutching the drive. Lightning split the sky, illuminating a sign, "Federal Facility, no trespassing." She smiled bitterly. Perfect hiding place. Then she crawled toward it. Rain poured like the sky itself wanted to drown the truth. Julia trudged through the mud toward the concrete structure half buried in the woods. It looked abandoned, broken fence, rusted satellite dish, no guards in sight, but she knew better. This was where the government had hidden Paragon's central node. The heart of the censorship machine. She found a cracked ventilation shaft and squeezed through, her body shaking from exhaustion and adrenaline. Inside, the hum of servers filled the dark, pulsing like a heartbeat. Lights blinked in rows, each representing millions of silenced voices. The air smelled of ozone and dust. She crouched beside a terminal and plugged in the flash drive Vargas had given her. The screen came alive, lines of code unfurling like a storm. Project Catalyst, final deployment glowed in blue. Upload will permanently disable Paragon censorship grid. Proceed. Y/N. Julia's hands hovered over the keyboard. Her heart pounded so loud she thought the machine could hear it. If she did this, she'd expose the network forever, but she'd also take down every public system tied to it: hospitals, air traffic control, emergency communications. The entire nation could collapse into silence and confusion. She whispered, "Is truth worth the cost of chaos?" Behind her, a voice answered, "That depends on who defines chaos." Julia spun. A man stepped out from the shadows, soaked trench coat, sharp eyes. The president's special counsel. He looked calm, almost pitying. "You're not saving democracy, Ms. Rowe. You're burning what's left of it." She clenched the drive. "You already did that when you turned fear into policy." He stepped closer. "Do you think the people want freedom? They want order. You take that from them, and they'll beg for chains." Julia stared at him. "Then let them decide what they want, without your edits." Her fingers hit enter. The room exploded with light. Sirens screamed. The floor trembled as the servers overloaded. The man lunged forward, but Julia yanked the cable free, clutching the drive. Sparks erupted around them, one last surge of resistance from a dying machine. She ran for the exit as fire alarms blared, the building collapsing behind her. Outside, rain hammered down harder, drowning the sound of destruction. In the distance, the night sky flickered, first one city, then another, as Paragon's blackout lifted. Screens across the country glowed with a single message: truth restored. No more filters. Julia dropped to her knees in the mud, soaked, trembling. The system was broken, but alive again. And for the first time in months, so was she. 3 days later, the world still hadn't decided if Julia Rowe was a hero or a terrorist. The morning after her broadcast, the internet bled raw truth. Thousands of classified files, surveillance orders, and internal communications flooded the public sphere. Names, dates, and directives that once hid behind layers of redaction were now being read aloud on every corner of the globe. Every deleted post, every silenced voice, restored. But so was the chaos. Markets crashed. Flights grounded. Hospitals struggled to reboot systems fried in the purge. And through it all, one phrase trended across every screen. Hashtag the truth was hers. Julia hid in a safe house overlooking a burned-out city skyline. The power grid was patchy, candles flickered beside her. Her face was pale, eyes hollow, yet calm. Vargas's flash drive lay on the table, its metal scorched from the upload. She hadn't slept since the blast. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the faces of those who didn't make it. A soft knock came at the door. Julia reached for her gun, then stopped when she heard a familiar voice. "Julia, it's over. They're rebuilding. But differently this time." It was Senator Hale, one of the few who'd refused to sign Directive R-5. She stepped into the candlelight, her expression unreadable. "Half the country hates you. Half worships you. The government is in pieces, but the people are awake again." Julia let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "So, we won?" Hale gave a sad smile. "There are no winners in revolutions. Only survivors." Outside, the distant rumble of helicopters cut through the night. Searchlights combed the ruins, the last sweep before the new administration took control. "You should come with me," Hale said quietly. "You'll be safe. For now." Julia shook her head. "If they rebuild the system, someone has to keep them honest." Hale hesitated. "You think the truth will save us?" Julia looked out the cracked window at the flickering lights of a wounded nation. "No," she whispered. "But it's the only thing worth saving." The senator nodded once and left. Julia turned back to the table, pulled a small recorder from her pocket, and pressed record. "My name is Julia Rowe. I was part of a system that lied to you. Then I broke it. What comes next is up to you." She placed the recorder beside the dying candle, watching its red light blink steadily, a heartbeat in the dark. Outside, the first sunrise in days broke over Washington. It wasn't bright. But it was real. The system was built on silence, and she shattered it with a single truth. Julia Rowe didn't just expose corruption, she reminded the world what honesty costs. Sometimes the light doesn't heal, it burns. What would you have done? Would you press enter? If this story made you think, made you feel something, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because the truth deserves to be heard.